I am Steve Rains, and we're going to kick off today our 5 myths about metrics that are hurting your business. So just to give you guys a little bit of background about me, I am one of the co-founders here at Pointman. I started working with home services business in the technology field in about 2002, started the company in 2006. And prior to that, I ran my own service business in the IT space, break fix, computer repairs, those kind of things. So in addition to having learned about this industry over the past 15 years, I also have some experience in running a similar related business. So I'm going to just jump right into this because our time is short today to talk about these 5 myths about metrics. And hop right in here and get started. So myth number 1, financials are all I need to measure. What a lot of people believe is that they're checking the health of their business if they look at their income statement, their P&L, cash flow summary, and other similar reports. And financials are good for telling you if you're making money, but they're not great to tell you if you're actually doing the things that drive success. So your financials don't really measure, are your customers happy? Are your technicians doing good work? And are your people working efficiently? They can be indicators of it, but they can also be misleading. Financials also don't show risk to the pipeline. They don't help you with operational issues. They don't tell you if your employees are burnt out. I mean, you can be making a lot of money if everybody on your team is working 16 hours a day, but you can't continue to have that kind of investment in your company from your employees without them becoming disgruntled. And obviously that's a key success factor in having a successful service business is having your employees be happy at work. Financials are also good at telling you that you need to make a change, but they're not great at telling you what change you need to make. Similarly, most people are looking at their financials at the absolute most. It's 30 days out. You're looking at the last 30 days once a month. Some people look at them quarterly. And that means what you're looking at is what's already happened. You can do some planning with your cash flow and things like that, but really what you're lacking is what can I do based on what happened yesterday to make my business more effective, more efficient, to make my customers happier, and to keep things running smoothly. And although you probably all realize this, you're measuring more already today. And when you're doing those kind of measurements, you're looking at the operations of your business and you're saying, hey, maybe it seems like we're being told that our competitors are getting jobs instead of us, or there's a lot of callbacks lately, or a particular employee seems to be not as enthusiastic. That's measurements that you are making. But those measurements aren't bundled up with any kind of numbers. So that sort of leads us on to the next point, which is myth number 2, I've got a pulse on my business. So if you've been running your business for any length of time, you've probably got a pretty good gut sense of how your business is running, or at least you believe that you do. And mostly this is measured based on what we call our gut. And there's a lot of scientific research behind this. Your gut is actually a really good indicator. A lot of information is hard to process when you're looking at raw data and you don't have good reports or good analytics in place. But your gut's really good at feeling that something is wrong. The problem with that is that your gut is actually very bad at identifying what is wrong. The research suggests that you can tell something is amiss, but you are very biased into what you think it is. And that's why it's super important that just using your gut isn't the only mechanism that you need to measure how your business is doing. So one of the important aspects of this is to start with, what are gut checks? What are the things where I'm making those kinds of evaluations? And I think one of the real keys to that is to look at the words that you use to describe them. So here I have that same list that I presented before, and I've highlighted in bold, like the keywords that are gotchas that tell you that you're looking at your gut. Things like a bunch. not having an actual number, a lot more, using extremes, a little, a lot, many. The ultimate in hyperbole, every. So every time we do this, every is absolutely a gut measurement. And measurements that compare two data points, but don't do so with a concrete number. It's not we're doing 20% less than we did last month, because 20% is obviously an accurate measurement, but not doing as well or doing way better. So when you have these gut checks, it's a great thing to go see, do you actually have any data that will help quantify what a lot more, every, not doing well, doing great, what those actually mean in terms of real numbers. So if you don't have data, absolutely use your gut. It is a great tool. But if you have data, you're going to want to make metrics. And one of the key challenges is figuring out what metrics you should use. So we have a principle called FAST that we use in our Pointman Pact. And there are a lot of these kinds of things that you'll hear about. You may hear SMART or SMARTER. Those are acronyms as well that are used for very similar kinds of acronyms for similar principles. But ours are focused. That means you're measuring one thing. What you don't want to do is measure 20 things, try and measure 20 things with one analysis, because when you do and something changes, it's really hard to tell whether it's the thing you think or something different. Your metrics need to be actionable. There's no sense in measuring something if you can't actually do something with it. So focus on measuring things that you can take action on. Simple. Everyone in your organization is really going to need to understand how your metrics work. And when you want to get feedback from other people on what they think about the numbers you're producing, you need to be able to explain your metric and why you're measuring it. And the more complicated this is, the more difficult it is. The more complicated it is, the more room there is for somebody to misunderstand, mismeasure, because they think you want one thing, but actually you want something else. And lastly is timely. It's wonderful to have really long-term measurements and a lot of data, but if you're measuring something today that you're not going to be able to use for 6 months, it's probably not going to help you on the ground in 6 months as you might think it will. Fundamentally, that's because what's going to happen to you is you'll be stuck in a situation where the measurements you take today are to solve problems that in 6 months you've probably either already solved or aren't problems anymore. And then you'll want new things. So make your measurements timely, things that you can take action on in the very near future. So let's take a look at myth number 3. I have a lot of data, so I can make good decisions. And this is a case where I like to think of the quote. Mark Twain is most famous for saying this, although he said that it was Benjamin Disraeli. There are 3 kinds of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. Raw data is not the same thing as information. And what that means is if you look at all your data, and you have a lot of it, it's very, very common for people to say, well, I've got all this information. What can I do with it? And the reality is that's not a very good way to go about analyzing your business. The reason for that is because when you have a lot of data and you're trying to fit something into it, you bring a lot of biases to it. So what you need to do is take a different approach. Ask the question, what is it I want to know? Are my techs spending enough time with the customer? Are my techs punching their timesheets correctly? Are my dispatchers routing the way I want them to, sending the technician to the job who's most likely to convert an opportunity? These are all really excellent questions that drive the service industry, and they require different metrics. Just starting with your data and trying to move towards those leaves a lot of room for you to pick the wrong numbers. And similarly, having lots of data is not the same thing as having good data. And I would argue that it's actually better to not have data than it is for the data to be bad, because when you have bad data and it says everything's okay, you may think to yourself, oh, things are fine. I don't need to worry about this because there are 75,000 other things in my business every day I need to worry about. This is one I can put on hold. But if that data is bad and you're making that choice, you could really be hurting yourself. Now, that doesn't mean you're not going to have any bad data. A little bit of bad data is your sample in the set that you're looking at is okay, and quite frankly, it's something that we expect. People are people, they make mistakes, nobody's perfect. But it's essential for you to find a way to minimize that and, if possible, tell the difference. So let's move on to myth number 4. I have software, so my measurements are good. And as a company that produces software as part of our offering, I would love to say that this is true, but the fact of the matter is it's not. And if you're already using software today and you have reports and you go look at those reports, the big question that I have is, how do you know those reports are right? And there are a few reasons for this. I'm sure all of you know that your reports are not made in a software company staffed by programmers who are former general managers of a residential service business. They are likely programmers who have graduated from some kind of computer science program or who have had training in a vocational school for programming. And given the age gap, many of them are probably millennials and may have never even owned a home or had to deal with anyone in the contracting industry themselves. And this industry uses a lot of terms that are similar. There are probably 14 different definitions of efficiency, where if you add one word in front of efficiency, it's different. Billable hours, sold hours. There are a lot of similar terms that, quite frankly, the people who write software may not be familiar with. So the first question is, when you're looking at a report, do the terms on the report mean what you think they mean? And then, do you know how the numbers are calculated? And could you manually calculate those numbers if you had to? I would encourage everybody to, if you've got reports out there, go take a look and just see if you can answer those questions and see if you can calculate those numbers. Because if you can't, there's no way for you to know if what you're getting back on the report is what you expect. It's very likely the numbers are right for whatever the programmer who designed the report was, for whatever they believe the definition is. But that doesn't mean it's what you expect it to be. So it's a really key point about software. And then visibility into data entry, right? So you have technicians, you have dispatchers, you yourself perhaps are putting information into your system every day. Can you actually see what is being entered in a way that's easy for you to work with? Let me give you an example of why this is so important. We'll take a billable hour efficiency measurement here. So we've got John, Dale, and Sam. And if we just look at the gross top level reporting, looks like, hey, John is just on target, Dale's okay, and Sam is knocking it out of the park here. He's great. But if we dig down into that and we actually look at what happened on this job, John recorded his time correctly. He did the job in 2 hours. So in this example, 30 minutes of drive time to get to the customer for everybody, and then we're expecting 2 hours of work. Dale forgot to dispatch himself. So he got there, he dispatched himself immediately when he got on site. He also did the job in 2 hours. Sam dispatched himself correctly, but he forgot to punch on site until 20 minutes into doing his job. And it actually took him 2 hours and 10 minutes to complete the work. So what does that mean? If you look at this, we have a record of what was recorded and what actually happened. So John recorded 30 minutes of drive time, did it in 120. Dale recorded 0, did it in 150 minutes. Sam recorded 50 minutes of drive time and did the job in 110 minutes. That's what he recorded. But in reality, John actually worked 2 hours, Dale worked 2 hours, Sam worked 2 hours and 10 minutes. So if you look at their actual efficiency, their actual job efficiency on site, John and Dale, the same, and just what we expected. And Sam, who previously appeared to be the most efficient, was actually the least efficient. And that's why it's absolutely critical that the measurements that are going in and the data that you're collecting is accurate. So garbage in is garbage out. Need to look to see that your employees are trained to enter data correctly, that they are doing it consistently, and also, do they know why it's important? And I think this is super key because people are going to do a better job if they understand why entering data is important. And that brings us to our last myth, which is employees hate being measured. And this one I think is really ingrained, particularly in this industry. And I think there are some people who do hate being measured, but I think there are great ways to combat that and great ways to make it a good experience. The first of which is you want to make sure that your employees understand why the measurement is valuable to them. And a couple of places. Number one, maybe you have compensations that are based on measuring them, or maybe these measurements help you identify who needs training. That's key. Now, employees aren't stupid, so they know you're measuring them because you want the company to be better. But they're employees of their company. They get their paycheck from you, and it's super important that they understand how the value that these measurements bring to the company actually makes them and everyone in the company better. And it's also, I think, important for a lot of techs to explain, hey, what's the value for the customer? For CSRs, dispatchers too. You know, nobody, I don't think, gets up in the morning and goes to work and says, I'm going to do a crap job today. Everybody wants to do the job, and everybody wants their customers to like them. Not everybody is good at building a relationship with customers, but I think everybody wants to bring value to them. And if you can explain how you can improve the value for your customers through these measurements in a way that's not punitive, I think that my experience is that it can really pay off. Another reason employees hate being measured is because they're not measured fairly. And one of these aspects is don't measure people on things they can't control. If something is out of somebody's control and you measure them on it, they're going to feel like you are being very unfair to them. Similarly, you want to measure everybody with the same job the same way. And we're all human beings, so we all have employees in our company who we like better than other employees. Don't tell any of my employees that. But it's just natural. People gravitate towards other people. And when somebody sees that they're being measured differently, even though the employees you like best, you might actually be judging more harshly, that difference comes across and it makes people, again, think that this is a really unfair situation. And you want to make sure that your metrics don't incentivize employees to behave badly. And this sort of also ties in with that don't measure people on things they can't control. You know, if you're measuring a technician on their drive time, but your dispatchers are the ones who are scheduling them, the only way that your technicians can control how long it takes them to drive places is by speeding. And you know, that's not something you want to incentivize your employees to do. So people expect what you inspect. Inconsistent measurement is you basically setting yourself up for failure because even the best employees will fall back into a natural pattern of just trying to get things done if you don't consistently measure them. And also, if you measure things that you can't or won't change, your employees are going to notice that. It's a waste of your time, it's a waste of their time. So really, again, focus on the things that you can do something about and that you will do something about. And you don't want to change your metrics every time. Like you may realize, oh, I'm not quite measuring the right thing, but you're really going to want to try and make very small changes over time. Because if somebody feels like, I just got told we're being measured on this, but now we're going to get measured on this, and then next week we're measured on this, it really will drive morale down, and it will make the employees hate being measured because it will be unclear to them what they're being measured on. In summary, measure every aspect of your business, value data-driven decisions, but don't forget your gut, measure based on those FAST principles that we talked about, make sure your data entry is good, and provide clarity and consistency in your measurements. And I think this is a great point for me to just mention. Here at Pointman, our principal product is called PACT, Process Analysis, Community, and Technology. And it's really built around these ideas. we understand it's very difficult for people to identify these kinds of measurements and focus and pay attention to them every day. That's why our team of success coaches works with you to identify your metrics, to help you measure them, produces a bi-monthly phone call with you to go over all these things, and trigger warnings if you see something that's out of the ordinary. It's really hard for you to do all the things in your business, and we believe that through a combination of process analysis, community, and technology, we can be a great partner to help you do that. So thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I think I'm coming in just on the wire here. We'll have time for some questions if anybody has them. This presentation will be available online for anybody who wants it later. And if you think of something after today that you'd like feedback on, just feel free to reach out and I'd be happy to have a conversation with you. Thank you very much.